Right now, the day's biggest news stories from a Vegas perspective. This is the Vegas Take with Sharp and Shapiro.
Oh yeah, what's up, Vegas? Back at you on a Friday. It is the Vegas Take. Sharp and Shapiro, glad you could join us. Yeah, if you haven't noticed, there's been a lot going on in the news, particularly over the course of the last 24 hours. We're going to try to figure out exactly what this alleged cover-up was in regards to Donald Trump and his administration and how they blocked the viewing of this whistleblower complaint. Michael Avenatti will be joining us in just a few minutes. He does such a great job in laying everything out for us, so he'll be joining us here in just a few. And then did you hear about this? This is crazy, right? You remember Aurora, Colorado? We remember the Joker movie and all those innocent people that lost their lives to a madman who was dressed up as the Joker. Well, now Aurora is refusing, that movie theater is refusing to play the movie that just came out. And Kaylin Bailey is going to be joining us in hour number 2. If you don't know who she is, she was 13 years old when that shooting happened, and she was babysitting, and the child she was babysitting died. She was in that movie theater during the shooting. I want to get her take on this. Does she think that the Joker movie should be played in that movie theater, or does she agree with the decision? So we'll get her take on that coming up in hour number 2. We also have to talk a little bit about the Super Bowl halftime show and why I think it's an absolute joke. Jennifer Lopez and Shakira, the lip-sync superstars, will be doing the halftime show at the Super Bowl. We'll get to that much, much more in hour number 3. But as I mentioned, Michael Avenatti coming up here in just a few minutes. We're talking about 2 words, folks, now, cover up. And don't even get me started with what Donald Trump said. In fact, I want to play this audio right off the bat. Donald Trump obtained by the Los Angeles Times audio talking about the whistleblower, and I just want you to hear this audio talking about the whistleblower or anyone who gave him information and being a spy. I want you to listen to what Donald Trump said in his own words. Remember, this is the President of the United States.
Who's the person who gave the whistleblower the information? Because that's close to a spy. You know what we used to do in the old days when we were smart, right? With spies and treason. We used to handle it a little differently than we do now.
I mean, this is unprecedented. And you know what he's talking about? He's talking about killing people that are spies. First of all, there's no spies here. So that's completely not true. This is the president trying to intimidate people that are spewing out information that could get him impeached. It's exactly what it is. It's intimidation. And then we have Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House, talking about William Barr. And by the way, it appears that William Barr had this complaint for several weeks, and he did nothing about it. This is Nancy Pelosi, in her own words this morning, talking about William Barr.
He's gone rogue. I think where they're going is a cover-up of the cover-up. And that's really very sad for them. And that to have a Justice Department go so rogue, well, they have been for a while.
Right.
And now it just makes matters worse. That the Attorney General was mentioned, that the President was mentioned, and yet the Justice Department directed the Director of National Intelligence to take this to the White House.
So we have Nancy Pelosi in the last 24 hours calling William Barr, saying he's gone rogue. We have Donald Trump talking about spies, possible spies in the White House. We have Trump calling for Adam Schiff's resignation. We now know that this whistleblower is a CIA officer. How did Barr handle the complaint? Apparently, well, let me just give you a step-by-step process here. The administration initially blocked Congress from viewing the complaint, citing presidential privilege, and only released a redacted version of the report to lawmakers this week after the impeachment inquiry had begun. The complaint also alleges that the White House sought to lock down details of the call by moving it onto a secure classified computer system that we spoke about briefly yesterday. The complaint also details extensive interactions between Rudy Giuliani, the drunk, Trump's personal attorney, and Ukrainian officials. And as I mentioned, the whistleblower was a CIA officer. I mean, this is just in the last few hours, actually. All this information coming out this morning. And now, this morning, and I told you this is going to happen, Vladimir Putin has to be shaking in his boots. The Kremlin is now saying that it is hoping dearly that the U.S. won't release details of the Putin-Trump calls. Why? Why? What would be in those calls that would be so damaging? I'm sure they were just talking about, grabbing a beer, right? Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump. So what does all this stuff mean? What does this mean as we take it out step by step and dissect it today, as we will? Again, what does it mean? What better person to have on the air with us right now to kind of sort everything out? And boy, there is a lot to sort out, than attorney Michael Avenatti. Michael, thank you so much for coming on. How are you?
I'm great. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, I want to start out by saying this because you put out a tweet this morning that I thought was fantastic. Because as you know, a lot of people on the right are going after this whistleblower, including Donald Trump, saying, well, it wasn't firsthand knowledge. What the hell does he know? I want to read one of your tweets, and I want you to talk about it because I think it's very powerful. You said, hypothetically, a guy is sitting in a bar. He overhears two other men describing the brutal rape murder they carried out 2 nights ago. He has no firsthand knowledge, but he gets their license plate number and reports them to police. Doesn't mean he's not credible or the police don't investigate. And you're so right on that. I want you to elaborate on that for us.
Well, yeah, what's important for people to understand is that this is the investigatory process, right? That's the stage at which we're at. We're not at a trial. We're not at a formal impeachment hearing. So the rules of evidence do not apply. Now, the rules of evidence relating to hearsay, or the rule of evidence relating to hearsay, it's a very complicated process and rule. In fact, a lot of judges don't even understand it, relating to the exceptions and when statements can be used and when they cannot be used. But what's important is we're not at that stage in this process. People rely on hearsay. Police officers, the FBI, and others rely on hearsay all the time when they're investigating crimes. Someone will report that they overheard somebody in a bar say something, or in a restaurant, or someone who will have a friend who said that they overheard something. That doesn't mean the police don't investigate, that they don't look into it.
Right.
So the fact that this whistleblower supposedly had no firsthand knowledge means absolutely nothing. So what? We now have a transcript of the call, or actually not a transcript, as I pointed out in the past. And
right.
Now Senator Feinstein has demanded the actual transcript because what was released was a summary. We're now going to have other officials and witnesses, firsthand witnesses from the White House. Presumably they're going to be called to testify. And there's going to be an investigation as to what really happened here. But
right.
This whole idea that we're going to discount everything that is in this whistleblower complaint because somehow it's hearsay is ludicrous. Hannity last night on Fox, I saw this snippet where he did this whole mock, objection, Your Honor, hearsay, sustained, game over. Well, guess what, Sean? We're not in a trial. This isn't a trial. We're in the beginning stages of an investigation to determine whether the President of the United States abused his power and misused the office.
And Michael, let's not even forget about this possible cover-up. I'm sure you've heard the administration initially blocked Congress from viewing this complaint. It is not out of the realm of possibility, based on some of the evidence that's coming forward, that William Barr might have sat on this for several weeks and done nothing other than try to figure out how to push this underneath the rug. And Nancy Pelosi now saying he went rogue. I mean, what do you think about this?
Well, very often the cover-up is worse than the crime, and I actually think that that's going to be the undoing of Donald Trump in this particular situation. And in particular, what I'm talking about is the moving of this transcript or summary from the one server to another server, which appears to have been done to obstruct access to it, to prevent access to it, and to make sure that it never saw the light of day. And if that happened, and if that is true, then there's going to be some serious problems for the president and serious problems for the people, or for the people that participated in moving that electronic file or those electronic files in order to obstruct access. I think that's absolutely obstruction of justice, whether there was an underlying crime or not. If they believed that there was potential criminal or otherwise exposure to the president, I think that is a very serious matter.
And I want to talk a little bit about how, at least in my personal opinion, and I don't think you'll disagree with me on this one, this relates to you in some ways, because in a way, it appears as though the administration and many within the administration, including Donald Trump, are trying to make this a hit job and discredit this whistleblower and anybody associated that might have given him any information, and they're going after them any way they can in a way similar to you. You've gone after Donald Trump way before Stormy Daniels. You've gone after some of the most powerful people in this country. And I don't think it's unfair to say that Donald Trump and possibly some members of his administration, maybe even Barr, have gone after you because you've made Donald Trump, you've gone after Donald Trump, and it's a main reason why his attorney is in jail and others as well. And you kind of started this storm. And, I think this does relate to you in some ways. And if you think that they're only going after Joe Biden because Biden poses a threat to Donald Trump, you've posed a threat to Donald Trump for years.
Well, I've got to be very careful in what I say in this regard, but here's what I will say generally. There is no question that Joe Biden is not alone. And what I mean by that is if anybody really thinks that Donald Trump and other members of his administration sought to weaponize the Department of Justice and other portions of the government against only one of his political opponents, Joe Biden, they're an absolute fool. Okay? Donald Trump and other members of his administration have utilized the power of government to target people that he perceived to be his enemy for some time now. And if you make a list of the enemies that Donald Trump has had, the people that have really spoke truth to power and gone after this guy over the last 24 months, I may not be at the top of the list, but I'm damn near close.
I certainly believe that. I also we've talked about this with you before about, getting transcripts of Vladimir Putin and the president. And now the Kremlin this morning is speaking out saying that they dearly hope that the U.S. won't release those details of the calls. What do you make of that? And do you think these transcripts between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump will ever be made available?
Well, it's interesting when something like this starts, it's like pulling on a string, and you don't necessarily know where that string is going to end. This server that this transcript was moved to, the question is what other transcripts were moved to that server? What other transcripts are out there, whether they be between Trump and Putin or Trump and others, that may prove to be very damaging to the President of the United States? I think we are in the very beginning stages. We're at just after the opening kickoff, if you will, of a very long game.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that. How long do you think this is going to go on for? I mean, as an attorney, I know it's hard. Pelosi was asked how long before this impeachment process will begin. How long do you think this will take? And you're right, by the way. There's a lot more evidence and a lot more information that needs to come forward. But, where do you think we'll be sitting in a month from now, 2 months from now, 6 months from now? Because you're usually pretty good about making these sorts of estimations. How long do you think this is going to last, this timeline?
Well, I think that momentum is on the side of the Democrats. So the Democrats need to try to maintain momentum if they're going to actually ultimately gain a conviction in connection with this. I do not think that time is their friend, meaning the longer this goes, I think the bigger the quagmire it becomes. I would hope that the Democrats would be able to pass impeachment charges no later than Thanksgiving. In fact, I'd like to see it a little sooner than that. And I'd like to see Donald Trump stand trial in the Senate within 90 or 120 days from now.
Now, if you're just joining us, Attorney Michael Avenatti shedding some light on the information that has been released here over the course of the last several days. So this morning, Michael, Donald Trump is calling for Adam Schiff's resignation. He also went on a Twitter firestorm this morning saying, again, that it was a perfect conversation with the Ukrainian president. That's the word he's using, perfect. He also said Representative Adam Schiff totally made up my conversation with the Ukraine president and read it to Congress and millions. He also went on to say he must resign and be investigated. He's been doing this for 2 years. He is a sick man. What do you make of Donald Trump's tweets, particularly over the course of the last several hours?
Well, he's flailing. There's no question that the pucker factor is at an all-time high with this guy, as it should be. He's very, very concerned. And let me tell you what no one is really talking about, and what I think is the absolute key in all of this. Right now, it appears that Donald Trump has the support of Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell and others in the U.S. Senate. But that could change. And as soon as Mitch McConnell concludes that Donald Trump is a drag on the ticket in 2020, as soon as Mitch McConnell concludes that Donald Trump may not only lose the White House if he's the nominee, but he could cause the Senate to flip, which at this point is unlikely, but we don't know where this is going to go. If Mitch McConnell becomes fearful that having Donald Trump at the top of the ticket could potentially produce a democratically controlled Senate, which means that Mitch McConnell loses all of his power in the majority. If that happens, as soon as that happens, Donald Trump is done, because Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham and others will throw Donald Trump on the trash bin of history, and that'll be it. They will force him out. They will force him to resign, or they will make it clear that if he stands trial in the Senate, he will be convicted.
And isn't it fair to say?
If that happens, Donald Trump is done. That is the key. The most important key from a political perspective is Donald Trump maintaining the support of Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell is probably the most powerful person in all of this.
You're right. And I was just going to say, doesn't this whole situation just elevates Mitch McConnell's power, does it not?
Oh, there's no question about it. I mean, if Mitch McConnell turns on Donald Trump, or again, if he determines that Donald Trump could drag down the Republican Senate and cause it to change hands, then Mitch McConnell is going to dump Donald Trump faster than you can imagine.
Let me explain this to you, Mike, and let me ask you this in layman's terms, because there are still Republicans out there, maybe not a ton of them, but if you watch Fox News, Republican pundits out there, people like Tucker Carlson, and TV hosts and opinionated hosts out there that are still calling this a nothing burger. They are still saying that the president did nothing wrong. They are still using White House right-wing talking points. And for the life of me, I do not understand it. There are some like-minded Republicans out there and politicians out there that are saying, hey, this is a serious issue. We need to get down to the bottom of it. What do you say to the people out there that are still saying that this is a nothing burger between this transcript, or somewhat of a transcript anyway, between Donald Trump and the Ukrainian president?
Well, you're either a fool or you're a partisan hack, or both. I mean, that's what I would say. And, what I will also say is this: you got to hand it to the right and Tucker and people of that ilk. I mean, they are very good at messaging. They stay on message. And they now have a distribution channel through Fox News and through social media where they can basically fabricate whatever position they want to fabricate, whatever message they want to make, and they'll get it out there. And they'll be, pick a number. There'll be tens of millions of Americans that will automatically believe anything that Tucker Carlson says, anything that Sean Hannity says, and anything the President of the United States says, no matter how outrageous it is. They will automatically believe it, and they will continue to beat the drum and attempt to control the narrative, which is another reason why the Democrats need to take advantage of the momentum they have.
I want to read you just a sentence of what Donald Trump said yesterday, and let's all keep in mind, this is the President of the United States. In talking about the whistleblower and then talking about anyone who gave this whistleblower information, he said they're almost a spy. He went on to say, quote, "You know what we used to do in the old days when we were smart, right? The spies and treason. We used to handle it a little differently than we do now." He's talking about literally executing a spy. By the way, there are no spies here. What do you make, Michael Avenatti? We're in unprecedented territory here. When can you recall a president of the United States spoke like that? And I think it is extremely dangerous to the country. I'm sure you would agree. What do you make of that statement that Donald Trump said yesterday?
Well, I mean, I think the closest thing we've ever heard to that is Richard Nixon and Watergate. But I believe that those statements constitute obstruction of justice and witness tampering. I don't even think it's a close call in my view. When you have the President of the United States basically openly threatening witnesses to his potential criminal acts, I mean, you can't do that. I mean, if an average American citizen went out and did that in connection with a case like this, they'd be immediately picked up. There's no question. They'd be charged with witness tampering and obstruction of justice. Mm-hmm. Prosecutors would be going crazy if you engaged in conduct like that.
Now, if some of these allegations are true in regards to the cover-up, National Security Council officials are saying it would represent a highly unusual misuse of procedures that were created to keep America's most important intelligence secrets safe. And I'm thinking to myself right now, Donald Trump is not the only person that could go down for this, right? There are many other people involved in this thing, maybe 20 or 30 people. We're not talking about one or two people here. Don't you think people are going to chirp? People are going to talk we're probably, hopefully, going to get down to the bottom of this. This could be the end of William Barr, in his career.
Well, if Donald Trump goes down for this, there's no question there's going to be a lot of other people that go down as well. I mean, if you look back at Watergate, I think it was 9 or 11 attorneys for Nixon were ultimately criminally convicted in connection with what happened there, not to mention the Watergate burglars and others. So this could have a significant domino effect. A lot of people could be caught up in this. And depending on how much momentum this gathers, this could be like rats leaving a ship. I mean, it could be a contest to see who can get off the ship first and save themselves.
When do you think it'll be made public? Because I think it eventually will be made public, especially in this day and age, the actual name of this whistleblower. And some would think that that's probably not right, it shouldn't happen. But I believe it will happen. We already know this is a former CIA agent. Do you believe eventually we are going to find out exactly who this person is and when?
Well, I think eventually we will. I don't agree with what the New York Times did yesterday. I think it's atrocious. It's outrageous in basically outing the whistleblower, not by name, but with a lot of identifying information. It's incredibly dangerous, especially when it's now been disclosed that this is a CIA officer. There may be potential crimes associated with attempting to out someone of that nature. I don't care if they're Republican or Democrat or independent or where they line up. I mean, it's a very dangerous situation to put somebody's life on the line like that. And it wasn't for the New York Times, in my opinion, to do that all in an effort to sell newspapers.
Donald Trump tweeted not that long ago, do you really think I'd be dumb enough to do this? I mean, I'm kind of paraphrasing here, but we remember that tweet. Do you really think I'd be dumb enough to do something like this with all these people listening? Well, guess what? Even with the so-called transcript that we saw, he is, Michael. He is dumb enough because the transcript shows it. And that's just the information that we know now, right? I mean, it's incredible. I mean, how dumb do you have to be, Michael, to do what Donald Trump did?
A week ago, he tweeted that out. He said, does anyone really think that I'd be dumb enough to make
right.
These statements with everybody listening? Well, guess what? We now know, yes, in fact, you are dumb enough to do that. Not only are you dumb enough to do that, you're also dumb enough to then release the summary of the call, which basically incriminates you. And then, to make matters worse, you're also dumb enough to attempt to cover it up. So, yeah, we've all concluded you are dumb enough.
Is there a chance, Michael, that Donald Trump could spend time behind bars for this? Is there a chance? What do you think is going to happen here?
I don't know that there's a chance that he would potentially spend time behind bars for this. I think that there's a chance he could spend time behind bars for other things after he leaves office, including his role with Cohen in connection with the conspiracy to violate campaign finance laws relating to the $130,000 paid to Stormy Daniels and others. That would be if he did not get a pardon from Pence or others. So, I think it's too early to tell whether there's a chance that he would actually be criminally convicted in connection with this. But I do think that there's a very strong likelihood that he's going to face impeachment charges over this. And, I've said this before, I'll say it again. We don't know what else is going to come out. We don't know what's going to come out in the trial. And I'm not willing to make a bet yet as to what's going to happen in a trial in the U.S. Senate. Anything could happen.
All right, Michael, last question for you. We're going to be speaking to you at some point, later next week. Where do you think we're going to stand next week? What more throughout the weekend? What do you think we're going to learn most likely in regards to this situation? Where do you think we'll be in a week from now?
Well, it's going to be interesting to see if this whistleblower is going to testify, and if so, when, as well as what witnesses are going to be called to testify along with the whistleblower. I mean, are we going to hear from William Barr as to whether he was a participant in this and whether he has targeted other political enemies of Donald Trump? Or are we going to hear from other White House officials relating to their role in moving these transcripts around on various servers and what those communications look like? I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens. You'll see the right and the Republicans try to muster some talking points this weekend to try to regain control of the narrative. And that'll really be the battle over the next 72 hours between the Democrats and the Republicans is who's going to try to define what this is really about.
Michael, you always do such a great job in laying out all this information, and there's certainly a lot of it. Thank you so much for your expertise. We appreciate it. Have a great weekend, and we will catch up with you next week, and I'm sure we will be getting a lot more updates from you on what's going on here. Thanks so much for your time, Michael. We appreciate it.
All right. All the best. Take
All
it
right.
easy.
Thanks, Michael. Give us a call right now, 257-5396, 257-5396. Phone lines are open. We'll discuss this on the other side of the break. You are listening to The Vegas Take.